Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 11, Episode 77. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Glad you guys are back with us to start this week on this Monday. Dave Bryan, how you doing?
Doing good. 12 years ago today. Where were you 12 years ago today?
I do not know. Where were you 12 years ago today?
Let's see. Where was I? I was obviously still back in Florida then. 12-year anniversary of the Steelers beating the Cardinals in the Super Bowl there. So wow. That's the anniversary today. That's man, it seems like yesterday, and then you look at what this Steelers team hasn't been able to accomplish since then. Obviously a little bit, obviously depressing there. Did go back to what the and play the Packers and lost in the Super Bowl, a couple years later there. But outside of that, kind of. You feel this thing coming to the end here, especially with Roethlisberger, and especially with the news that we got last week. Talking, obviously with Art Rooney II speaking, and it seems almost certain you would think that Ben Roethlisberger's coming back for 2021, but past then it gets really, really cloudy there for sure. So that's a long way to say got a lot on my mind this morning.
All right. Well, hopefully it'll be a busy week for us over at Steelers Depot. Let's jump into the news of the day. And unfortunately, Dave, some sad news. The Steelers passed along on Saturday night. This team announced that Patricia Rooney, the wife of Dan Rooney, had passed away at the age of 88. Obviously, Dan passing away back in 2017, I believe. They were married for 65 years. Patricia Rooney passing away at 88, but a lot of outpouring of support from Steeler fans, from the football community at large about the impact that she had. And, something she took a lot of pride in was community work, whether that was with the Salvation Army or local parks, and just putting a focus on getting women involved in football in such a strong and large contingency of Steelers nation that are women. And I think the Rooney family, Patricia in particular, took a lot of pride in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can tell by just the outpouring of support, not only from members of the organization and current players and former players, but just people around the league. Owners from other teams. I just noticed this morning, Jim which Irsay is?
Yeah, Jim Irsay.
Jim Irsay. I'm old enough now where I confuse the Irsays. Had a tweet with a picture up there this morning there. Then I think Mrs. Benson had released a statement from the Saints, and then obviously the commissioner and his wife released a statement there a few days ago as well too. So very impactful lady, especially when it comes to off the field stuff and the NFL.
Absolutely, and I think the Bidwells too had released a statement last night too, in memory of Patricia Rooney. So some very sad news to pass along to you guys today, and so we'll move ahead here with some more Steelers news. And team president Art Rooney continued to do some media tours. I know, Dave, you've written up some things about some more recent comments that Art Rooney said, and in one of the articles that you wrote that kind of caught my eye was his thoughts and evaluation of Mason Rudolph. And I'm trying to figure out if the Steelers really believe, as Rooney says, that Mason Rudolph is capable of being an NFL starter, or is this kind of a lip service thing? Because what else are you going to say? What was your vibe on how serious and sincere we should take Rooney's comments about Mason Rudolph?
Well, look, obviously, what are they going to say when asked about him? And really, the response came to a question of what happens if something doesn't work out with Ben Roethlisberger and his contract this these next several weeks that would prevent the Steelers from having Ben Roethlisberger back, and that was the whole context and how the question was framed. And he went on to say, well, obviously Mason Rudolph would be the number one person we'd think about. He says, Mason's had a good few years now, putting himself in position to potentially become a star. It's posturing, I guess, more than anything. It comes along with, what else would he possibly say? Do they think that Mason Rudolph really could be a starting quarterback in this league? I think it's possible. Overall, we have seen Mason Rudolph progress as a quarterback. Now, there are 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL, right? On any given week, and obviously Mason Rudolph has started his share of games. Would Mason Rudolph be viewed as one of the top 10, 15 quarterbacks in the NFL if he started with the capability of potentially taking a team to a Super Bowl? If that were to happen, next year, probably not. Obviously not. Will he get a chance at some point in the next, let's say, 2 seasons to win and be a starter in the NFL? I think there's a good chance of that. Do I think it's going to necessarily be with the Steelers? No, I don't. And really, it's just tied to contract, to the contract and that alone. And I've said that now for a couple years since it's been obvious that Ben Roethlisberger, obviously played last season, and it looks like he's going to play this season. And the fact that Mason Rudolph's contract expires after the 2021 season, barring something happening to Ben Roethlisberger where Mason Rudolph has to start another large selection of games in 2021, and barring Mason Rudolph just blowing the socks off of in those starts, you have to think that there's not a good chance that he would be re-signed prior to the start of free agency in 2022. And if that's the case, you'd have to think that there would be some number of teams interested in Mason Rudolph's services at X amount of money, and that X amount of money being more than what the Steelers are willing to pay. So, and then also, look, if it got that far, and we'll obviously see what happens in the draft this year. I think by the end of next year's draft, we expect there to be yet another quarterback on this team. So, whether or not, do they believe that he can be a starting quarterback in the NFL? I think they do. Do they think that he'll potentially be the starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers past 2021? I dare say that they probably don't at this point here. And once again, it's kind of tied to contractual things more than anything else.
Well, even putting the contract aside for just a moment, I hope that this commentary from Rooney is a little bit more on the we have to say it posturing side of things, as opposed to a sincere belief that Mason Rudolph can be some sort of longer term starter in this league. Because I think he's progressed. I think you can say he can be a competent backup and spot starter, but he's not a guy that if you're going into the season saying Mason Rudolph's our guy, your expectations for that year cannot be too terribly high. This guy's not going to go on some big run. He's not going to beat Josh Allen or Mahomes in a shootout in a playoff game. And I don't think he can even do what Ben is doing right now, where he's throwing 600 passes in a season and just basically running the entire show. Even with some of Ben's warts, I don't think Rudolph is capable of that. So hopefully they are not deluding themselves into the idea that Mason Rudolph is capable of being that heir or longer-term guy. I know they were high on Rudolph coming out, and I don't think he's been a colossal miss. And again, there has been improvement, but he is not the future of this franchise. And so whenever the time comes, if Rudolph's in contention to be the replacement to Ben, hopefully they go in a different direction.
I think he's more than what they had in Landry Jones several years ago, for sure. And I think at this point, look, they're tying their wagon to him at least through the 2021 season to be the backup. So you're one snap away, right?
Sure. And I'm okay with him being the backup. I have no problem with that.
So and once again, I remember saying before the 2021 season started, or 2020 season started, was that the only way we're going to learn about Mason Rudolph throughout the season is if something happens to Ben, or if we get into a situation where, you're in that final game of the season and he gets snaps. And really that's what it came down to. And we did learn a little bit more about Mason. And I think we learned that he progressed, but we still have not, they're still, lacking another 3 or 4 complete games, in meaningful situations to really see where he's at. Mm-hmm. And the only way, once again, that we're going to find out the answer to the question would be, unfortunately, if Ben Roethlisberger didn't play for another large portion of games, and it's something obviously nobody roots for at this point. So the question becomes, look, they're not going to re-sign him this off. They're not going to extend him this offseason. Talking about Mason Rudolph, right? I mean, it's just not. Sure. That's not going to happen. So, and would they extend him between the time period? Almost like a Landry Jones situation a couple years ago, right? When I was pretty convinced at that time, I think that Landry Jones would at least leave for somewhat greener pastures, and they ended up re-signing him to, what was it, a 2-year deal or something like that. I don't think that Mason's going to want to go that way. I think even if it meant signing for the minimum elsewhere, I think he would see that the writing's on the wall, that it might be beneficial for him to get a fresh start somewhere else as well, too.
Well, so, you're saying after 2021, is that what you're referring to? Well, if Ben's retiring and there's an open quarterback spot, I mean, what better opportunity is he going to have than to stay in Pittsburgh, where he knows the system, they know him, and there's no quarterback on the team, even understanding they're going to draft him.
Right. Well, I think it's going to come down to money too, and the Steelers, we'll see what they would offer at that point, and if they did, then that would we could circle back to the comments that Rooney made this past week, talking about we think he can be a starter, because you're not going to sign Mason Rudolph for more than minimum unless you believe he can start in 2022. Period.
I think he would get more than minimum just because of the nature of the quarterback position. I mean, they just always get paid more than what their actual value is.
Okay, so if you re-sign Mason Rudolph after the 2021 season is over with, who's going to be the Week 1 starter for the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2022?
Yeah, I think you go into a camp with a battle of a rookie quarterback, hopefully a high pick, versus Rudolph, and see who's more ready to play, or really is the rookie ready to play. So the question you ask yourself, but again, I just hope the idea isn't that Rudolph is any sort of long-term option. At best, he's a bridge type of quarterback, and I hope that's a very short bridge that you're driving over to turn to your rookie quarterback.
Well, he never said he'd be a long-term starter. He said be a starter. So,
right. Well, yeah, I'm trying to parse the language. I mean, I don't know if that means spot starter or long-term starter. I'm just saying hopefully their belief is not that Mason Rudolph can be the heir, because again, they were super high on Rudolph coming out, and he's not been terrible. He has progressed, but he is not the future of this franchise.
Hey, here's the thing, though. There's no way in God's green earth right now that they're thinking, you would think that they're thinking that far ahead right now, because so much can happen. You've got 2 drafts that will take place before the start of the 2022 season. You obviously have free agency, and obviously a full season that's got to be played out as well too. So, once again, we can go back into parsing exactly what he had to say, but even I think it's a little much to do that at this point. I mean, he was asked, go back to what the question was. What happens if you can't get Ben Roethlisberger back? Well, we feel Mason's a starting quarterback in this league. So I think it begins and ends there with the 2021 season, that if Ben doesn't come back, we are comfortable with Mason Rudolph being our starter in 2021. Once again, I think trying to parse out, other than the obvious end of it, which I'm looking at, is Mason Rudolph's contract ends after 2021 season, and to me, we're wasting breath trying to project what's even going to happen after that point, because so much can happen within the next 12 months.
Sure, and hopefully that's all it is. It's just Rooney taking it a very surface level thing. I mean, I hope so. But I think it's fair to think about the future of the quarterback position, because it is the most important position on the roster, and it's going to hit you pretty quickly here if you think this is going to be Ben's final season. And so, not that you're taking action right now, but you're at least thinking about, okay, what does the future of our position look like? Because we haven't had to think about that question for 15 years. And so I think you have to at least start thinking about it now. And just
once again, you got 2 drafts that are going to take place before.
Well, you'll have one by the time that Rudolph's contract's expired, and you're sitting there saying, okay, what's going to happen with Ben? What's going to happen with Rudolph? We're bringing him back. Is he going to be in the future for 2022? So I think really it's just one draft.
Okay, but I mean, they obviously the way the board breaks and whatnot could decide what happens maybe in some early rounds, even though I don't think that they're going to take a quarterback in the first 2 rounds of this draft. What if they do? I mean, I am open to the plausibility of that happening there. So that could obviously, what happens in this year's draft needs to go into into mentioning that there is 2 drafts that will take place. Now, if we undeniably thought that there's no way they're going to take a quarterback in the first 2, slam dunk, put your money down, guarantee it right now that they're not going to take a quarterback in the first 2 rounds of the draft, then I'd be okay going your way there. But the fact that I think we both agree that we can't do that right now leaves open the fact that, well, a lot can happen and that there's 2 drafts that's going to take place between then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, just to the overall point, I think Rudolph is fine as a backup. I think he's going to be that number 2 role this year, and I can live with that. I just hope that Rooney's comments were more the lip service of, we think he can be a spot starter. We're comfortable with where he's at now. If Ben weren't to come back or were to retire, we couldn't figure out the contract stuff, we'll start with Rudolph because he's the number 2, and hopefully it's just nothing more than that.
Now, here's the thing once again. If they do re-sign him, then the odds of him being week 1 starter in 2022 become extremely great at that point.
Yeah, I mean, he would probably be the favorite. All the rookie quarterbacks start out of the gate all the time. So obviously it would depend on, and that's just all projection, who they draft and how ready that guy is, and a million variables we can't predict right now. But I wouldn't discount the rookie either because I think it's been proven the rookie quarterbacks can come in and have immediate success.
I just think the way they, obviously they wouldn't deny that said rookie or in that situation couldn't be the starter. But I think if you kind of think back to the way they initially what the plans were with Ben Roethlisberger when he was drafted, and obviously things changed in a hurry with him.
And things have just changed a lot in the game in general.
And I mean, look, I mean, Tommy Gunn. I mean, if you really go back and think about it, and think about the way Tommy Maddox played, you can see a little bit of Rudolph in Tommy Maddox. To be honest with you, if you go back and really think about it, obviously Tommy Maddox was not a very mobile quarterback at all. Mm-hmm. Tommy Maddox really, wasn't. He was a pocket passer, but he didn't have good command of the pocket. It was pretty much stand back there and fire away. Thus the nickname Tommy Gun. So the fact that they went that way with Tommy Maddox, and look, he even got him into the playoffs and all right. Obviously didn't win a Super Bowl with him, but and he was slated. He obviously opened that 2004 season as a starter, and they were going to ride him as long as they possibly could at that point. And then the plan obviously was to have Charlie Batch back him up, and then Charlie Batch off-season knee issue, automatically Ben becomes Kirk Kidner. I mean, for God's sakes, how that offseason went there with the quarterback room and all like that. I think one of the interesting things obviously in the equation right now is what's going to happen with this. I put more stock in Rooney talking about the quarterback position last week, talking about, well, we're probably going to add another quarterback to that room. So I think that's the biggest aspect instead of sitting here and spending 30 minutes on parsing him giving a Captain Obvious answer of his thoughts on Mason Rudolph.
Yeah, but we're good at spinning our wheels. That's what I've been trained to do. I think the story was also that, I'm trying to remember the exact context of it, that Cowher asked Neil O'Donnell to come out of retirement, I believe, in 2004 because of the injuries at the quarterback position.
I have to research that deeper and go back into some of the.
Well, I know O'Donnell. I just listened to an interview where he said it. I'm just trying to remember when and where and the context of all that was. But I know Cowher at one point asked O'Donnell to come back out of retirement, and O'Donnell considered it, but ultimately turned it down because his body felt good. He was healthy. He didn't want to risk an injury late in his career that could affect the rest of his life.
Look, people, a lot of talk. There's been a lot of talk this past week and all. A lot of people just want to, run Ben Roethlisberger out of town and all, and say thank you. Here's the gold watch. See you on down the road at the Hall of Fame, ceremony and all like that. I get it. I mean, and once again, it goes back to, if you honestly believe that even with Ben Roethlisberger coming back, that this team has zero, zilch, none, nada chance at winning a Super Bowl in 2021, have at it. Have at the decision to bring Ben Roethlisberger back. Okay. Mm-hmm. But if there's any inkling whatsoever that makes you think that, okay, Ben's coming back, things can happen. The defense should be good enough. This team at least can win the AFC North, and then who knows what's going to happen at that point. If you have any inkling whatsoever, then you have to stand behind the decision, for them to bring Ben back. Obviously they could just say, look, man, this, we have, no chance whatsoever here, and we'd much rather spend that money to kind of shore up this defense, a little bit. But even in shoring up that defense with let's say the $19 million, minus obviously replacement costs and displacement costs and all like that, can you get a quarterback in there within 2021 and 2022 to help, to give yourself a better chance at winning a Super Bowl? In other words, do you draft one in 2021 and then hope by his second season he's that guy that can lead you? Look, make no mistake about it. We see it year in and year out. In today's NFL, you've got to have a franchise quarterback, and you've got to have some semblance of a defense in the story. That's why you're looking again as people saying, "Oh man, Brady versus Mahomes." Well, what the hell did you expect to happen? Now occasionally you get those outliers like you had with the Eagles and the Patriots a couple years ago. But who was half of that equation there? It was Tom Brady on one side, and really, if it's not for Nick Foles and kind of an accomplished quarterback and do they even make it there? So you got to have a franchise quarterback, and you got to have some semblance of a defense. And in 2021, if you're resigned to the fact that Ben can't do it, then have at criticizing the organization for bringing him back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but we know that Ben's the quarterback in 2021, and for where that goes, is to be determined. But we'll take it one step at a time. Art Rooney also talking about the future of JuJu Smith-Schuster. So will Ben have JuJu to throw to this season? Rooney says that numbers or the feasibility of bringing back JuJu, and he also applied the statement to a lot of the top free agents, is where is that cap number going to fall in at? Obviously, the higher the cap number is at, from that floor of $175 million, the more likely and the easier it is to bring some of those guys back, like JuJu, like this other top free agents. So a pretty obvious statement there from Art Rooney, but I think the only statement you can make right now in terms of saying, the ability to re-sign your guys is highly dependent on where that cap number comes in at.
Yeah, and I think he made it clear a couple times in a couple of these interviews, and I would expect maybe a few of those interviews to carry on this week with maybe some of the radio stations or whatnot. I'm surprised that didn't happen on Friday or whatnot, but he said several times they don't know where the cap number is yet, and I believe him, especially due to the economic impact and all, and probably still trying to figure out the fallout from the pandemic and all like that. So, but do they have a pretty decent idea? I got a kind of a sense in some of the parsing of his comments that they do, and to what degree, I don't know. I think he's said a couple of times that the number is going to be down. So, or at least that's the feeling that I get, that I feel that he gets, that it'll be down. So in other words, is the dream of it being flat at 198.2, slowly slipping away here? Not that it probably hasn't already been slipped away 6 months ago, but just kind of parsing every nugget that he said in regard to the salary cap, it certainly seems to be that way, So now, how much lower than 198.2 million will the number end up being? Obviously there was the Pro Football Talk report a couple weeks ago now, I guess, stating 180 million. Not that it means anything. I've had a couple of agents tell me they think it's going to come in higher than that. What is, obviously that's going to play a big factor in this. The higher that number is, over 175 million, is going to go a long way in determining whether guys like JuJu Smith-Schuster and Cameron Sutton and whoever else gets re-signed this offseason. I think we've got a pretty clear path of what this team's going to have to do. A lot of what they're going to have to do to get cap compliant here, though.
Yeah, and those are all things we've outlined in previous podcasts, and we'll talk about that more in a second about the path to getting to, let's assume, the worst case scenario of $175 million cap, which is where the floor is. And just to pick up on an excerpt of Rooney's comments about that here quickly, he says, quote, "We know what the floor is. We're kind of hoping there's at least a little bump over that floor, but we also know that it's probably going to be a reduction from where it was last year, which presents a difficult situation." And so for us, I know the number we talked about, I believe on Friday's show, was if you can come in at 190, that would be a great number for the Steelers. Obviously, the higher the better, but if you come in 190, that's kind of the number that I'm silently and also now publicly rooting for the cap to come in at.
Yeah, I am too, but after him making some of these comments now, got my head down, walking down the street, kicking a few rocks here.
I'd say kicking a can, but that's a little too on the nose for a salary cap. For me.
I don't know. Maybe I'll come in 185 million, Alex, and maybe it'll be kind of an in between of that number and the 100 million number that's floating around here. Maybe the owners are probably feeling just heck, let's just rip the Band-Aid off, put this. In other words, let's not affect any future years here now. Whereas the NFLPA will probably be saying, hold on here, because obviously the NFLPA knows that the lower that number is, it's going to wipe out to some degree some middle class players here. Something we've talked about really right from the start of this pandemic and the effects that it'll have on the National Football League. The owners, though, probably saying, we don't want, we want to just put that behind us now and then focus on this new TV deals and just write all that off as a loss. We don't want to factor in and have to borrow and kind of limit ourselves, from a revenue standpoint year by year moving forward. And you can definitely see their side of it too. There is still going to probably be, once the numbers come in, and the funny thing about it is this is a very important week. And boy, when is the commissioner supposed to speak? What's that, like Wednesday or Friday or something like that?
Sometime this week, yeah.
Sometime this week here, we're going to finally hear again from the commissioner. And boy, I hope they hammer him. Now, are we going to get direct answers? Probably not. It's probably going to be, we're still trying to figure out the economic impact, blah, blah, blah. But I would at least hopefully try to, here's what I think is still going to come down to, regardless of what the commissioner says this week, that there is still going to be some level of negotiation in the next, what's now really 6 weeks left before the start of the 2007 or 2021 new league year. Some sort of CBA kind of, negotiation to see if they can negotiate this cap number, right? So
if you could ask Roger Goodell one question cap related in terms of what you think, hopefully he'll give you a good answer on, what would you ask?
What would a cap number be?
I don't think you're gonna get a good answer for that. I would just ask, what are the odds you think it's gonna come in above that floor, just to at least get an understanding of that happening, and from there we can talk about what that number would be if it's above it. But I just would like to know his answer in response to, is it going to at least come in above the floor that you've set at?
Well, if I can't get him to give me the exact answer, then I want to know. I would want to know what degree of negotiation do you think will take place in establishing the number in the next 6 weeks? I guess.
Gotcha.
I would just want confirmation that we're not necessarily locked into what the spreadsheet has to say with the balance sheet and all like that. If I can't get a direct answer, I think that's the way my my head, where my mind would go right there.
That's a good question. Yeah. And just to segue something that Rooney was talking about with JuJu, and I made this point briefly before I expanded upon that for an article this morning talking about if, let's say the cap comes in at a decent place, 190, we'll just say, and the Steelers have the ability financially to re-sign JuJu Smith-Schuster for the $16 million, per year that you and I have laid out over the last couple of weeks. The article I wrote this morning for Steelers Depot said that if the Steelers want to do that, that's fine. But if they're going to pay JuJu like that, they got to play him like that number one receiver in the sense of he can't have an average of under 9 yards per catch or 8.5 yards per catch is what he had basically last year. One of the lowest numbers for any receiver in NFL history, that he was really used as a running back, tight end, check down option, which had a lot of value to it, of course, but you're not going to get enough ROI on $16 million per year if a dude's catching 3-yard slants the entire season. So that was the article I wrote this morning, that if you want to bring back JuJu, that's fine, I'm all for it, but you're going to have to change his use in the offense to something more similar to what he was being used as the first 3 years in football.
He's got to at least put up Hines Ward average yards per catch stats, period. Which was around 11 or 12 yards, right?
Right. It was interesting. In 2001, the year right after he got his contract extension, Hines Ward had a really kind of JuJu type season. A lot of stuff shallow, short, underneath. And then the next couple of years, they got him more vertical. And now part of that was the quarterback changes from Cordell Stewart to Tommy Maddox to Big Ben. But you kind of saw them make that adjustment. So, yeah, JuJu's somebody that – and certainly JuJu's capable of big plays. He's got 2 97-yard touchdowns in his career. You just can't pay a guy $16 million per year and have him average 8.5 yards per catch. There's value in that in terms of third down, red zone stuff that he did. It's like he had a good season overall, but you're just not going to get the return you need if you're going to pay that guy that kind of money.
And a lot of it goes back to really the when Todd Haley came in, initially as offensive coordinator. We've slowly have seen the deterioration of Roethlisberger and pushing the football down the field, right? And obviously one of the big factors that became real evident with Todd Haley was the progress they made for Ben to process and get the football out of his hands quicker, right? Because they knew they knew in the Bruce Arians offense, no risk it, no biscuit, four verticals.
Yeah, four verticals and 40 sacks.
Four verts and 40. Well, you can make that's a band name right there. 4 verts and 40 sacks right there. That's a band name if I ever saw one there. I mean, if you think about you think back at the maturation of Ben Roethlisberger's game, going back to 2004, man. Wow. I mean, it just kind of hit me when you're kind of talking about that. Did we see Eli Manning or Phillip Rivers really go through kind of the maturation of their style of play like we did? Now, obviously, we didn't watch Phillip Rivers week in and week out, or Eli Manning week in and week out. But if you were to put all those three guys in a vacuum and say which one had the most variation in quarterback style play, it has to be Ben Roethlisberger, right?
Oh, by a country mile. And this is a stat that I tweeted out a couple weeks ago, that 2007 Big Ben had a 10.4 sack percentage rate, sacked on 10% of his dropbacks. That was second highest in football, only behind Trent Dilfer, who played like half a season. So really, Ben was tops in football. And in 2020, Ben's sack rate was 2.1%, the best in football. So he basically had a quarterback that, a little more than 10 years ago had the highest sack rate in football and now has the lowest sack rate in football. And I don't know if that's ever been done in history before.
Here's the thing, and we said this on the last show or the show before that or the show before that. I know it's been within the last 3 or so shows. Ben's going to have to start holding on to football a little bit more. Ben's going to and the byproduct of that's probably going to be Ben Roethlisberger getting hit a couple more times, and Ben Roethlisberger maybe getting sacked a few more times. That's the only way you're going to be able to get the timing to push the football down the field. End of story.
Right.
Because regardless of who you bring in, whatever shift you have on the offensive line, it's just not magically going to be great in 2021. But I mean, can it be better in pass protection? Yeah, absolutely. And But with all that said, look, the other aspect of it too is you can't have him back there throwing the damn football 45 times a game, period. So obviously, the less time he has to drop back and throw the football, that's one less, each less time that you avoid him taking a sack or an unnecessary hit.
Yeah, and obviously JuJu's, and I understand why JuJu's yards per catch was so low, because so often he was used as an extension of the run game on RPOs and slants and just the one-step game to kind of get you going on 1st and 10 or 2nd and 9 or whatever the case was. So I'm not surprised that his numbers were that low. But of all the receivers in NFL history who caught at least 90 passes in the season, JuJu's 8.57 yards per catch is the lowest in NFL history for a wide receiver. And you know what? If you read the article, you would see the number. Do you know what the longest catch JuJu had in 2020 was? He had 97 catches total. What was his long catch of the season?
Just air yards?
No, just overall. How far? How just total yards?
It had to be 20 something. It wasn't much further than, let's see, was it 33 yards? I'm trying to remember.
31, a touchdown against Dallas week 9. That was the longest reception that JuJu had this season. It's just on 97 catches. And so that's how you get 8.57 yards per catch. And I'm not saying that JuJu has to be Tyreek Hill or catch, Martavis Bryant, 14, 15 yards per catch, but you got to be at least in double digits if I'm going to pay you $16 million per year. And I don't fault JuJu for that. I'm not even faulting the offense for that. I'm just saying you got to recognize if you're going to pay JuJu all this money, you're going to have to use him in the offense a little bit differently than the way you used him in 2020.
Well, I think it was only, not even a dozen times he was targeted more than 15 yards down the field, right? I mean... That
sounds about right, yeah. Not often. I mean, his route tree was just... I would love to see... Is there a way to see, like, route trees either week by week or season by season? I would just love to see... Because there's just a big cluster in the middle within 5 to 10 yards of the routes that JuJu ran this season.
You can probably tweet one of these guys at Next Gen Stats and implore them to do some sort of heat map or something like that.
Right.
Look, we're not too far along. I don't think we're too far along now from subscription Next Gen Stats data. And once they do that, I mean. I didn't know what a data scientist was, but I know Steelers Depot has one now.
Yeah, with Brad.
Yeah, I mean that guy's phenomenal. What you can get the things, and he's got. By the way, he's got a great. We kind of tandem working on a piece together of adjusted net yards per passing attempt and run success rates here coming sometime this week. So make sure you look out for Steelers Depot on that, because there was a tweet once again. Nothing boils my blood more than to see someone who, especially a national writer, say, look, I'm not even foolish enough to think that run games don't matter, period. But there was a tweet out there this week by a national writer that said, look at the yards per carry and yards per game, and using the rankings of the Buccaneers and the Chiefs to support the narrative that you don't need a running game to be a Super Bowl contender. But the fact is, when you I got down a rabbit hole here. But Texans O-line coach Mike Devin, interviewing for Giants offensive line job, was also requested by the Steelers, but didn't interview with them. So there's a little bit of news for you from Aaron Wilson there. Sorry to interrupt.
So he requested and did not interview. I'm curious why he didn't end up interviewing.
Right. But. Where was it? Oh,
you were talking about the run success rate.
Yeah, run. Just goes, and I think one thing you're going to see in this article that Brad's going to put together here, that the run success rankings for both the Chiefs and the Buccaneers were top 15 in the league. As opposed to both teams being ranked near the bottom of the league, and other things like rushing yards per game and rushing yards per carry. So now take me back to where I was.
I'm not even sure where you were on that. We're talking about just JuJu and
JuJu and look, I mean, obviously, if you look at just the first 3 years of his career, had how they were using him down the field more on those slot fades. And man, go back to that Jacksonville game a couple years ago. He had a really good game against some good, A.J. Bouye and all like that in that game. So, I mean, we've seen – now, is he a burner? No. But, I mean, can he get down the field and can he get you? And well, obviously, heck, he's got 97-yard touchdowns on top of it. So he can run away from people. You have to push the football down the field a little bit. Can he be an option route possession receiver? Yes, but sure. that shouldn't be it. Right. You're exactly right there. Now the question becomes his market value is his market value, period. And the lowest probably the Steelers, unless they do something really unique in structure in his contract, which would mean really essentially guaranteeing the first 2 or 3 years of his deal. The lowest they're going to be able to get that first year cap number in 2021 down to is around $6 million or so. So that seems like way out there and away from the Steelers' ability as we sit here right now.
Yeah, until we know that cap number comes in higher. If it's 175, I don't see really a path to bringing JuJu back. If it comes in at 190, then I think you can certainly work that into the conversation. But yeah, that was the overall thought on JuJu, just one sentence. If you want to re-sign him, pay big money, you can't catch 5-yard, option routes. You got to do something more with him than that. That's the overall takeaway from the article. But Dave,
really the whole receiving group as a whole, because you just can't continually expect Deontay Johnson to run 7-yard slants, or 3-yard slants, and the same with Chase Claypool. Look, Chase Claypool's got a great get off when it comes to getting separation on those slants, and Deontay does as well too. Now Deontay, I think we've seen enough now with him in the NFL. It's not his favorite thing to run into the middle of the field into potential damage there, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's when he tends to get those alligator arms with him. Now, obviously, you can do other, incorporate him down the field and run the outs and stuff like that. I mean, I think if you look at his numbers through his first couple years, he's got good separation ability when targeted. There, so you got to take that aspect of it, and how many total times? Was it enough times that Chase Claypool was targeted down the field, not necessarily outside the numbers? We need to see Chase Claypool targeted more inside the numbers down the field.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, hopefully, just if you can see these yards per catch for guys like JuJu and others rise, I think that means two things. A, it obviously means you're designing more downfield plays for them, and you're hitting those plays, which is important. And then two, hopefully that means that you're relying less on the short pass game to be your run game substitute, which means your run game just in general is better, and you're not feeling like you have to rely on the one-step slants to kind of replace that run game. So if the yards per catch for these guys could increase, I think that obviously means good things for your pass game. Also think it means probably good things for your run game as well.
We need to see Ben Roethlisberger's average depth of target and average depth of completion go up by at least 1.5 yards, I think, for starters. Second, we need to see Ben Roethlisberger's attempts per game go the other direction, down. And then, obviously, we need to see the Steelers' run success rate go up. All right? So that's a lot. I mean, that's a lot to ask for right now.
But I think they're all interrelated too.
Oh yeah, absolutely they are. Because look, and like it or not, and one thing, keep going back to what you said about the pistol and things that we expect to see as well too. All of this has got to be interrelated here. You've got to be able to run. You've got to be able to push football down the field, and look, you're going to have that heavier dose of motion in there. Your success rates are going to have to go up, and like it or not, you're going to have to use more play action, man. I mean, play action works, period, whether you run or not. And the thing about it is they didn't, even though the run game wasn't working or hasn't worked in 2.5 seasons. They haven't been using enough play action. So hopefully some level of pistol will be able to allow that. Maybe in pistol will still allow Ben maybe the opportunity to see the field and then thus get the ball downfield a little bit more too. So you've got 3 big things that you have to, if you want this offense to reach levels with a non-mobile quarterback such as Ben Roethlisberger, one that no longer can be expected to extend the play like he did 12 years ago. You've got to put things in his favor, and that's 3 big boxes that this team has to check with him in 2021.
Agreed. Speaking of big boxes to check, not only from on the field, off the field standpoint, Dave, you wrote an article continuing your kind of cap series of the Pittsburgh Steelers and talking about the path to get cap compliant. If there is a worst case scenario where the cap comes in at the floor of $175 million, that would put the Steelers and most of the league in a difficult spot, but they wouldn't have a choice but to get cap compliant. So what is the path to doing that if there is that worst case scenario?
Man, I loved finally being able to spend an afternoon with this and putting pen to Excel sheet, if you will. But I think it's pretty cut and dry, Alex, and I don't think there's anything earth-shattering that we haven't already talked about in the last 4 weeks or 5 weeks or however long we've done it there. I think the starting point obviously is knowing what the cap number is, and we just talked about that, how Rooney doesn't know, and I have no choice but to use $175 million number, as much as it pains me, until I get some sense of idea that it's going to be higher than that. And I don't know if we ever are. I think all of a sudden it's going to be wham, here's your number,
Probably.
Like that. And by then, who knows how many things have already taken place that the Steelers have done there. But obviously, if you're working off, look, the starting point right now is this team, and we've covered this, is dealing on a $175 million number, is that they're roughly $30 million over that number, right? Actually, a little bit more if you look ahead at some of the expenditures that they have with Chikwama Okorafor going up about $1 million, and then obviously the placeholder for the workout bonuses, which is under $1 million and all like that. So let's just go ahead and call that number $31 million and use that as a starting point there. We've already determined that, and I'll be shocked if they don't restructure the contracts of Cameron Hayward and Stephon Tuitt. Right? I mean, we've established that. I mean, that's as, of all the things that I've laid out here, that's as slam dunk as it gets right there. Take it to the bank. Am I correct?
Yep. Write it in pen. Gonna happen.
All right, so that'll save you $11 million right there. So I've got that. We just took the $31 million down to $20 million. Hooray! All right, from there on out, can you restructure the contract of Chris Boswell? Yes, and you can save $1 million that way if they deem that necessary. All right, so we're at $19 million if they choose to go that way. The big thing, obviously, to watch here is what's going to happen with Ben Roethlisberger. Okay, do you get any sense whatsoever that Ben Roethlisberger is going to take a pay cut in any way whatsoever? He's scheduled to make $19 million this year. Is there any part of you that thinks Ben Roethlisberger is going to give some of that money back?
No. That was clear.
Me either. And I don't think, and as much people saying Ben should play for $1 million or $4 million or whatever, I just don't think that's the right thing to do here. And I don't think Roethlisberger should be expected to. And look, his own words are going to get twisted against him now. And I think he partly does that on purpose sometimes, but regardless.
When you say his own words, you mean him saying, I don't care what my pay is?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's something, obviously, he knew that conversation was going to be on record. That is a very just like player speak thing to say. And yeah, I wouldn't put much stock into it.
But you know that there is, right? I mean, there is going to be radio. There is going to be sports DJ discussion about, well, Ben said this, and how come he didn't take a cut in pay? And I don't know if he purposely sets himself up with using the words that he uses, but I cringed the moment I read that tweet. The quote, and obviously we did not get the exact context of him saying it. We're relying on that being transcribed correctly, but that's all going to get thrown back on him. Well, Ben didn't want to win that bad because he didn't take a pay cut. We'll see. Look, is it possible that Ben says here's a couple million? I guess it's plausible, but I will be absolutely shocked if Ben does not get paid his $19 million in 2021. And I think you believe the same thing.
Right, and if there was a pay cut, it would still come in conjunction with an extension, probably with multiple years that you're, I think, about to delve into.
Right, and it's something that we've said for look. If he does not take any new money up front, as form, on top of the signing bonus that they'll give him by turning a large portion of that $19 million into the signing bonus there. If they don't give him any more with that signing bonus on top of that 17 point whatever ever million there, and if they do the maximum thing of a 4-year extension here, now people get caught up with us saying voidable years. What does that actually mean? It can mean 18 different things here. Does it mean that more than anything, it's going to give the player the ability to void the contract after the 2021 season, because that's a trade-off in him not getting any new money to do this extension. Okay, so you've got to be able to give him an out of some kind, or some sort of mechanism as far as a roster bonus next March that's extremely high, that makes it easy for both to separate from each other. Okay, so people get too caught up with what does the voidable mean. The fact of the matter is you're probably not going to expect him to play maybe 1 year past this year, in other words, 2022. But in all reality, 2021 is what you're setting up to be his final year there. So don't get caught up in us saying voidable. It's just a way to to add 4 years onto his contract that does not give him new money. And there's got to be a trade-off somehow for him signing up for 4 more years and not getting more new money to do it. Basically you tell him, look, we're going to add on this 4 years here, but we're going to cut you anyway. You got to make it somewhere, But, you don't want to leave it in the Steelers' hands when they say, well, damn, Ben played pretty damn good in 2021. We're just going to keep him at, we got him to sign off on the extension. It only pays him $25 million in 2022. And Ben's going to say, hey, where'd my signing bonus go? For signing. Don't get caught up in avoidable years. Just get caught up in the process of they can add up to 4 years voidable, 4 years period, or more, even if they want to on an extension, but you can only stretch out the signing bonus for a maximum of 5 years for cap accounting purposes. And that's what this whole thing is about. This is really kind of a glorified contract restructure. All right. It's just he doesn't have the current years on his contract to stretch out any signing bonus here.
So you add the current year.
Right. So you add more years, and then you take a large chunk of that $19 million, 17 point whatever the number is there, and then you turn that into the signing bonus. The end result, and this is the end result that everybody should be caught up here with, is that it clears $14.34 million this way. And in doing so, you create, as we said several times, you create that same amount of potential dead money in 2022 if he's gone in 2022 there. Obviously, if he sticks around, then the dead money doesn't accelerate and all. But don't get caught up once again in that aspect of it. Now, can they do an extension that only adds 2 years onto this thing and then do the same thing with no new money? Absolutely. But it lessens the amount of time that you can stretch out that $17 million for cap accounting purposes, which means that you save less money in 2021 cap space. So if the goal is to save as much cap space as possible with Ben Roethlisberger without him taking a pay cut and without him getting any new money, then this is the only way you do it, and that's add on 4 more years and then turning a large portion of that $19 million he's due into a signing bonus. All right, we've talked about that 18 times in the last 6 shows. The end result there is saving $14.34 million. All
right, so you went from 19 down, being 19 over, to now being a little over 5 over.
All right, so then we're to the point there, what's going to happen with Maurkice Pouncey? If he retires, it's pretty cut and dry. You save $7.34 million after roster displacement if Maurkice Pouncey retires. period, or you cut him.
Right. And if he comes back?
And if he comes back, then you have to figure out, what do do you want to do something similar with him that you did with Roethlisberger? And is he fine with taking no new money, 4-year, voidable, 4-year extension with however you want to set the voidable years? It's not important there. But if that's something that he's open to, you could actually do something similar to him that you did with Roethlisberger, and you can save $5.54 million off his cap number that way. I think if look, that we're already talking about it, there's a question if he's going to play in 2021, right? I mean, you have to think that if he does play, that 2021 is going to be it for him. So if that indeed is the case, then you have to explore doing something similar to him that you did with Ben Roethlisberger, and I don't think it's out of the question. If they do that, there's $5.54 million for you right there in additional cap space.
So if he retires or is cut, then you're going to be about $3 million under. You'll be at the 172 or the 175 max. If you do the voidable years, you're under probably by a couple $100,000.
Well, I mean, you save seven. What do I say? You save 7-point-something million one way, and then five the other way. So choose whichever way you want to go.
Right, but I'm just saying we were 5 over. So under that scenario, to get cap compliant, to be cap compliant, either path, but one is a little bit more space than the other.
Right. So I mean, we managed to get this team cap compliant, and all we've done at this point is restructure the contracts of Stephon Tuitt and Cameron Hayward, and regardless of what happens with Pouncey, really, and then other than him standing pat at his $8 million number, right? But with Ben Roethlisberger, if you do the extension we've talked about there, that saves the 14.3 million that way there. So we've got you almost there at that point, and that's based on the $175 million cap number. Now, how do you get even more under at that point? Well, I mean, we'll see what happens. Will they extend anybody else other than potentially Pouncey and Roethlisberger within the next 6 weeks?
Yeah, that would obviously take TJ Watt out of the equation. You could argue, I think the most likely candidate of the guys we've talked about is Steven Nelson in terms of doing extensions. I don't know how much that's going to save you. Probably not a whole lot, I think, as you've outlined, but that's the name that comes to mind.
I think there's a chance you could see one or both or none of Nelson or DeCastro extended. Mm-hmm. In the next...
Do you want to do I don't know if I want to do an extension with DeCastro. I just feel a little uneasy about that. I get that from a cap standpoint, trying to save money, but I don't know if I want to give him an extension right now.
I feel more uneasy about it just from the aspect is I'm not sure how much he wants to play anymore.
Right. Well, let's assume that he does. I mean,
all right. Well, if he does, if he does, I have no qualms about extending him 2 years.
I don't know. He split 31. If it's going to be the last year for Ben and Pouncey in 2021, you're hitting the hard reset button anyway on this franchise. I mean, I don't know. He didn't play great last year. Was that due to injury? Maybe, but I kind of would want to play the season out. I just don't know how much money I want to tie up into the guy. I mean, I love the casher. He's been fantastic, but I just don't know if I would do that unless I really had to.
My biggest aspect of him is how much does he want to play anymore? I really think he's got Andrew Luck disease right now. Just some of the comments. I mean, I think the whole pandemic, and I think and him looking at he's got money in the bank. He's got a new baby now. I think this is a different David DeCastro than the one that came out of Stanford. From a mentality aspect now there. I don't think he gets all caught up in the legacy aspect of it and all like that either. So,
my worry with the Castro is we're having this conversation just for cap purposes and not for the player's worth and extension purposes.
I think he is. I think if he comes to me and says, "Look, I'm all in for the next for these next 3 seasons," I don't think you just look at the one season him and look, without a doubt. I mean, 2020 was not a great season for him. Period. Mm-hmm. In a story, that's not the David DeCastro that we're used to seeing. I think it can get back back to better than that, though. So if that's the
Sure.
case, and he tells me he's all in, I have no qualms extending him for 2 years. Period.
All right, fair enough. And that would save you a couple extra $1 million.
Yeah, look, I mean, the thing is in this climate right now and all like that, trying to, they would obviously be fair market extensions. They would obviously have to include new money up front with them, and all like that. I think worst case scenario, if you were to extend both Nelson and DeCastro by 2 years each, worst case scenario is a combined cap savings in 2021 of $5 million. Now that number could climb all the way up to 8 or 10 million, depending on obviously certain other factors there. But I wanted to keep as conservative as possible, and I think a conservative number of $5 million saved between the two of them on 2-year extensions each is the way to at least be very conservative there.
All right, so you're basically getting this team to be between $5 to $7 million under the 175 worst case scenario cap under these parameters?
Yeah.
All right. And then from there, would you suggest doing anything else? Do you cut Vince Williams? Do you cut anybody else? Because obviously you're just still got work to do to re-sign guys and draft class, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. And look, I mean, the whole preface of this article was to get it because, look, there is still a lot of cost that's going to happen after March 17th, right? But you have to think that the Steelers are moving this in lines in the sand. Now, obviously, they're planning for down the road, but the key component right now is to get cap compliant and then some, because whatever work that you think that you want to get done with your own free agents or someone else free agents, you have to allow for within these next 6 weeks here, obviously. Nobody's getting franchise tagged, right?
This year, no, they don't have
the
luxury to do that, even if they wanted to.
All right, we've established that aspect of it there. Obviously, you can do the exclusive rights guys without issue. There's the restricted guys. How many? I mean, there's only a couple of them anyway, and I think we established when we talked about those restricted guys that probably not going to happen. Right? At least at the restricted number, you might re-sign those guys to 2-year deals and make it where their cap hits barely $1 million or something like that. So that's not even worth worrying about at this point here. Contract terminations obviously is the only other way that you can go, and realistically, and I know people are going to say, but what about Joe Hayden? I just don't see there being. I will be stunned if Joe Hayden is cut in the next 6 weeks, period. End of story.
Yeah, I'm not anticipating it.
I mean, is it plausible? Yeah, I guess. But I will be stunned if Joe Hayden is terminated in the next 6 weeks here. So if we throw out the possibility of that happening, and if we look at the rest of this roster here, you really only have 2 candidates to be cap casualties here, and those two players are Vince Williams and Derek Watt. And I don't think, and look, I was not a fan of Derek Watt's play in 2020, but I still think what you save with him versus the hole that you have to fill with him, I think the hole's greater than what you save minus roster displacement with him. So we've had this conversation a couple times. Technically, if you cut Derek Watt, you save $1 million in cap space. End of story. After roster displacement and everything, is the $1 million cap space saved versus what you lose in a special teamer alone worth cutting him?
Yeah, it just depends on what the overall cap situation looks like. If that's not that's $1 million, but if it potentially prevents you from doing something or just makes more difficulty. The way I look at Derek Watt is that I think if he gets cut, it'll be a John Bostic type situation where maybe you draft a fullback like my guy Ben Mason late in the draft or some UDFA, and then he gets cut 43 seconds after the draft ends, something like that. I don't know if he'll be actually cut before the start of the new league year, but I wouldn't hate it if they did.
All right, so that leaves us down to one player then, Vince Williams, a guy that would go back to what we've talked about most of the season here. What's going to happen with Vince Williams this coming off season here? Once again, what you gain cap-wise versus what the value of the player is really comes into play here. So I think the best case scenario, because I don't think in a vacuum, I don't think Vince Williams is at a bad price at $4 million in 2021. I think that's really what you got to look at this year. But how much is the economics going to come into play here? You know?
Yeah, had it not been for the extreme circumstances, we wouldn't be talking about Williams as a potential cap casualty. I know nobody should root for the cap to be above 175 more than Vince Williams, because there's a lot on the line for him with that number.
Now, can you get the best of both worlds here, and you go to him and say, all right, let's meet in the middle here, and you take a $2 million haircut, and is that fair to him? Is it fair to the Steelers? Does he give you the middle finger and say, I'll see what else I can get out there on the street? I think that's the best of all worlds right there, as you go to Vince Williams and you say, will you play for $2 million? And if you don't, well, we're probably going to have to cut you here, because they, after roster displacement, you save 3.4-ish, right around in there, but by cutting him, is he worth the extra $1.4 million? I think so. You really have to take a hard look at it just from the sheer economics of it, though, if he's not willing to take a pay cut and insist on playing for $4 million.
Yeah, it's just a hard conversation to ask any guy to take a pay cut, especially a guy that hasn't played poorly or anything like that. So if you had to do it, if you felt like that was the only way to keep him was a pay cut, then I guess you would explore that option. But I think you just make a decision whether because he's worth the money. It's not like he's overpaid. So you just make a decision whether or not you see enough value in keeping him or more value in cutting him and freeing up that cap space.
All right, let's recap what we have here. All right, we have $11 million. Take your shoes off, Alex, because we're already over 10.
All right.
$11 million by restructuring Tuitt and Hayward. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go ahead and say that they'll do Chris Boswell as well too and get another $1 million there. I don't think they will, but they might. So that's $12 million. $14 million with Roethlisberger.
So 26.
There's 26. Is Pouncey going to come back?
My prediction is that he does.
Mine too. Is he going to come back at $8 million?
I think it makes sense to do the avoidable years in that scenario. So a little more murky, but let's assume that he does avoidable years scenario like Ben.
All right, so there's $5.5 million for you.
All right, so 31.5.
All right, it's hard to predict what's going to happen with DeCastro and Nelson.
Yeah, let's assume nothing happens with them because it's just I think it feels less than 50-50 right now. It could happen, but let's just assume that that's not the path they take.
All right, then let's go get $2 million in some way, shape, or form somewhere else, whether it be Vince or whatever.
Okay, so $33.5 million are your total cap savings, I guess you could call it, cap reduction.
Okay.
So that would, at the current rate, that would put the Steelers how much under the 175?
Couple million under, right? Because we said 31 million is really kind of the starting point.
Right.
We just trimmed 33 million there, right?
Yeah, so you'd be about $2.5 million under, roughly.
Well, that's not that's not going to get you
much of anything.
That'll get you the exclusive rights guys tendered. With the displacement there of about $500,000, so I took you back down to 1.5 under now, and you got your exclusive rights guys tended there. You're not going to get JuJu or any of those other guys at that point there. So that almost leads you to believe that they're going to get will the number come in at 175 million? I tend to believe not. So let's go ahead and take it upon ourselves to think that the number is going to come in at 180 million. All right.
Okay.
So we went from the 1.5 in room to $6 million. 1.5 plus another 5. That's 6.5 million under a $180 million number. You got a little room to play with there.
Yeah.
Now, obviously not past March 17th, because you still got work to do. But at least you're under, and maybe you can re-sign a guy or two. And still, it's going to be tough to get JuJu in under that number unless you get creative there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the 175 million, if the cap comes in at the floor, is that doomsday number. Anything else you can work with a little bit, unless it comes in at like 176.7 or something.
Right.
I
guess what we're saying now is, man, we hope the number comes in at over 180 million. I think that's
at the minimum. Yeah.
Right.
I'm rooting for 190, 180 minimum. If it's under 180, it's going to be really, really tough. And that is, to me, the sirens going off scenario.
The higher it comes in under 180 million, assuming the path that we just laid out. And once again, we don't know what's going to happen with DeCastro and Nelson. I think those guys are, at least one of those guys, I think is prime for an extension. You know,
it's just harder because those are true extensions, and it's not the multiple years where kind of, not that it doesn't matter, but it's easier to negotiate that way.
Right, and because both those guys are going to get new money, their cap number will come down, but how much will it come down? You know, and it's not going to come down more than you would think, $5 million per guy. So, is there a potential of getting $10 million versus I think a more realistic thing would be to get a combined $8 million from them both if you extended them in 2021 cap space. But I think a conservative approach would be able to get $5 million from them.
Yeah. So we'll see. I think that just highlights the importance of the cap number, and that is the almighty number that will be the Steelers and the rest of the league's guide. And again, you're hoping for 190, rooting for above 180. Anything below that, it's going to be a difficult couple of months for the Steelers.
Now, do you consider what I just laid out, what we looked at there, the kind of hell that's being painted, really annually?
Yeah, I think that
it's a challenge.
People don't realize the ways of how much cap space you can clear without really having to do a whole lot. But if it does come in at 175, they will be in cap hell because there were not a lot more moves left for them to make.
All right. How are they going to fit J.J. Watt into this?
Well, J.J. better play for cheap. You better be bunking with T.J. or something because he ain't playing for much money.
Now, I took a lot of criticism again on the Twitter machine over the weekend here, basically poo-pooing on everybody's idea that J.J. Watt. Now, we will not part ways, Alex, after this podcast, based on anything that you tell me here in this part of the conversation of the show. Okay, your job's safe. You'll still be a good friend. I will not take my Vitamix back.
Well, now I'm just scared. No, JJ Watt. I've never endured JJ Watt.
Is JJ? Give me a path that JJ Watt will be a Pittsburgh Steeler. A realistic path that JJ Watt will be a Pittsburgh Steeler in 2021. It's all yours. Sell me.
There is no path. I'd be a bad salesman. You have to fire me for selling this idea. I would love for someone to present me the idea. I've yet to see one, unless J.J. Watt's playing for the minimum, as you say. It's just not going to happen. Again, there isn't even a need for J.J. Watt. You have Hayward, you have Chute. Where's Watt going to fit into that? So it's a nice idea. It's fun to think about because of T.J. and Derek, assuming he remains a Steeler, but it's just not going to happen. Play Madden if you want that scenario to pan out.
I mean, why? How much is? I was told that JJ has all this money now. How much has he earned? What, $200 million or what? I don't know what his career. He would obviously just play for the minimum, just to play with his brothers to potentially win a Super Bowl. Right?
Yeah, no. Players don't destroy their bodies to play for the minimum when they're worth 10x that.
All right, why do we take so much hell for painting a religion? Do people? I don't get it. This is the thing that I struggle with, Alex, with what we do on the site and on this podcast, trying to present as realistic options as possible. Why do people want us to sell the other end of it, that to try to sell the impossible?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
I've never have gotten this into the business here.
Right. I think that you probably got more pushback on JJ than I have. I haven't really seen anyone of my mentions, at least, actually clamor for that. I'm sure there are some fans that think about that, and I've seen some Facebook posts about it. But I mean, I think most people, for at least JJ's case, understand the reality that there's no feasible, realistic path for Pittsburgh to come. I mean, you can't be in the camp of, oh my God, they're in cap hell, and also be saying that, oh, well, let's get J.J. Watt. Like, those things don't work together.
Now, would both of us did both of us love J.J. Watt the player and think, oh boy, how great it would be for J.J. Watt to play for the Steelers? Absolutely. I think it'd be absolutely fantastic if something like that to happen. But I don't get what people get out of that. Is it just this fandom aspect of it that they just, won't allow them to see the reality, or what?
Yeah, I think it's just people liking the story and the idea and things like that. But I'm probably not going to convince them any differently with this conversation.
We're not, but
there's just no path for that to happen.
I mean, there's hardly a path for them to even, even at 180 million of them re-signing a lot of their own based on what we laid out. Mm-hmm. Now, if you want to go and ring Ben Roethlisberger's door and get him to take less than 19 million, God bless you. I mean,
the goal for the Steelers, wherever the cap number comes in, is re-signing your own, because they're losing so many guys. We've outlined that, and you got to try to retain as many of those guys as possible. You're not going to retain most of them or all of them, obviously, but the goal is not let's go find the outsider again. You may bring in a low-level Jesse James or B.J. Finney or some minimum type guy, but the goal with whatever cap space you do have is bringing back whoever you can bring back.
As far as other options with Ben Roethlisberger goes, could you do something where, I don't know, you get him to defer a good chunk of that $19 million? Look, Ben, you just take a $1 million salary, $1.075 million salary, and then we will firmly guarantee the rest of that money in 2022 that you're not getting paid this year. And in doing so, your cap number drops 17 point whatever million. That way, we're just going to sign you to an extension with no new money. We're not going to give you any, but we're just going to essentially rip up that contract, put 4 more years on it here. You're still going to get the rest of that 19 million. You're just going to get it in 2022, but obviously we wouldn't expect you to play for it at that point. And then at that point, that full 17, do you want a $17 million dead hit in 2022, or do you want a $14 million dead hit in 2022?
Are we going to have, I'm being a little facetious here, but are we going to have Ben Roethlisberger Day the way we have Bobby Bonilla Day every July, whatever that is?
And see, that's
that payout for like 20 years.
Right, and that's another thing that people don't understand. For cap, if you can work out a payment plan with him where you pay him $1 million for the next whatever, that's between you and him, is when you pay that signing bonus as far as the schedule. Mm-hmm. The signing bonus.
People say they get like a big chunk, like big check at once. That's not how signing bonuses work. You don't.
You negotiate the time payment. Now, when you look at the bonus proration, all that bonus proration is it's on paper, and and the rules of the CBA say for accounting and paper purposes only, you can only stretch that the amortization of the signing bonus out for up to 5 years if that's the length of what's remaining of the contract, or whatever the length of the contract is if shorter there. So Ben could be under contract for the next. You could put him down and put him under contract for the next. Ben Roethlisberger signed a 20-year extension at age 30. How old is he? 38.
Yeah, about to turn 39.
All right, we'll sign Ben Roethlisberger to a 20-year extension. All right, and we're going to turn 17 point whatever of that $19 million into a signing bonus there, and we are going to pay Ben Roethlisberger out that 17 point whatever million signing bonus over the next $20 million in real bank payment check writing process there. The problem is for cap purposes only, you can only stretch out that 17 point something million dollars for accounting purposes over the total 5 years. All right. So, did I make that clear enough where people understand that him getting the signing bonus, you can only, for accounting purposes, you can only stretch it out for so many years. And then once you do cut him, all that accelerates into the, comes due for cap accounting purposes.
Right, which is why we talk about in the voidable year scenario that money hit's going to hit you in 2022, assuming that Ben is done after the season.
Now you can agree to him. Ben would probably sign off if you said, "Look, we would like to pay you that 17 point something million dollar on this signing bonus. We'd like to pay that to you out over the next 20 years."
Right, that's the difference between cap and cash when we talk about those type of things. Right. Okay, cap and cash. Yeah, there you go.
All right. Anyway, all this is going to happen real quick here, so don't let us go down this rabbit hole too much deeper anymore moving forward, other than to recap and what all this actually means when it happens, because a lot of this.
Sorry to interrupt. Is there a part 3 in your series of cap compliancy or cap situation, or is that going to wait until more moves happen?
Yeah, look, I mean, I've got them cap compliant now. What else do people want? I mean, the next step in this now, when it comes to the Steelers 2021 salary cap, is on March 17th. What happens once they're compliant, and what costs are out there to move forward? We can't create any more ways for them to create cap space. So we are waiting on 2 things now: the cap number, and then the Steelers getting compliant to that cap number, which a lot of what we just outlined is going to happen to get there. We just don't have a firm number to deal with here, to get to that point. So really the next part in this series should happen on March 18th. Where, okay, they're cap compliant. What awaits the Steelers, and how much more cap room will they need to create?
And that cap room question is important for all the unrestricted free agents they have this year. Dave, we've talked about the exclusive rights players. We've discussed the restricted free agent players. Let's also touch on, we've done it throughout the season and throughout the offseason, of course, but some of the unrestricted players. We'll talk about the offensive guys today, circle back to the defense probably for Wednesday's show. So offense, unrestricted free agents, we know some of the marquee names, whether that's JuJu Smith-Schuster, James Conner, Alejandro Villanueva, several guys on offense who are pending free agents. Look,
we already talked about JuJu. It's going to be tough in whatever world, whatever the number is, right? I mean, if it's 100, there's no way he's coming back on 175 million. What if the number's 180, 185 million? I think it's plausible. The farther you get north of that 180 million makes it more plausible that JuJu Smith-Schuster returns. And once again, it would probably be on something around 16 to 18 million dollars average yearly value, and with a cap number no lower than $6 million unless the Steelers change the way that they do contracts.
Right, I agree.
All right, James Conner. A lot of these conversations are going to be real short here.
Yeah, I think just A, the Steelers' financial situation, B, our Rooney's comments, C, just the lack of a run game overall, which I don't put all the feet of Conner. Of course, I put it more in the O-line than James Conner. I think Conner's a talented player, but just the injury history, things like that, you're just not going to bring him back. You're going to move on, find someone else.
I mean, his market value outside the Steelers, all it takes is one team, right? I mean,
what do you think the market value is?
Man, I've seen Pro Football Focus say $6 million. Man, there's no way. I think that's with him. I think it's more around $3 to $4 million. I think that's what he signs for, something like 2 years at 7 or 3 years at 9. Right? 9 to 12. Whatever his new money average should come in between $3 to $4 million, in my opinion.
Could you see an incentive-laden type deal?
I don't think it'd be smart for him to do that. I think he needs to try to get as much guaranteed money as he can up front.
Well, I think as an add-on to whatever that framework is, plus an additional couple million incentives.
Right. I mean, for games he stays dresses or run. I could see him doing that. Now, he won't get that from the Steelers because the Steelers don't like to do deals that way. But could he have another million, or could his total value contract include him earning up to another, let's say it's 3 years, okay, another $3 million in roster bonuses? Yeah, I think that's possible with him.
Yeah, I think that might be the best path for him, but don't see Pittsburgh entertaining the idea of bringing Conner back in any serious fashion.
Alejandro Villanueva.
Again, I know that where the Villanueva stands over here.
You won't find a bigger fan club of his than you and I. But that said, market value doesn't match up to the Steelers' economics.
Yeah, I think he's gone because I think the market value, I'm not entirely sure what number to put on him, but it's going to be a number out of the Steelers' price range. Just, franchise left tackles, even though he's older, guy has not missed a snap in 5-6 seasons, good in pass pro, the run blocking is lackluster. I understand that, but the guy's going to get paid, at least $10 million. I think it's going to be $12 to $15 million is what he gets on the open market. And so Villanueva, I think, has played his last down as a Pittsburgh Steeler.
I agree. I think his market value maxes out around $15 million. I wouldn't be surprised if he got it, to be quite honest with you. Yeah. Your boy Matt Filer, where's Matt at now?
Yeah, I was sitting on the couch this week and I was thinking about it, and the more I've thought about it, the more open I am to bringing back Matt Filer. I was really gung-ho about it at the start of the year, and he did not have a very good 2020 playing left guard, so I was kind of down on the idea. But I still would like to explore bringing him back in whatever form or fashion, depending on cap and market value. Both those things are, I think, tough to predict right now. But the path I had was re-sign Filer on some sort of 2-year deal. I'm thinking probably between $5-6 million per year. Shift him back out to right tackle where he had his best season in 2019. And then a core four can hopefully go into some sort of swing reserve role or flip to left tackle. And then I think you draft a left tackle early, day 1, day 2. Hopefully that guy can start right away. That would definitely then push a core four into a reserve type of role. So if there's a way to bring back Filer to play him at right tackle, that would of course still start Kevin Dotson at left guard. I'm open to the idea.
If he signed, what's his value? $6 million a season? It's got to be at least that, right?
I said around 5-6. I think 2 years, $12 million was the number in my head.
All right, if they did a deal with him, 2 years, $12 million, his cap number at least would be around $3 million in 2021.
Yeah, I think you try to go as little in the base salary as possible, but then the signing bonus, probably that sounds about right.
So then after displacement and all like that, you need about $2.5 million in cap room, wishful thinking, I think, to be able to afford Filer in 2021. Is it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's possible. I mean, $2.5 million. I mean, if you can't do that, then you aren't re-signing much of anybody. But and again, if the cap's at 175, then that may not be possible. But if it can come in above 180, then I think you got at least a chance to do it.
All right, a lot of these other conversations are going to be super short. Zach Banner, I don't think there's any doubt about it. I think you could see Zach Banner either sign a deal almost identical to what he signed last year for, what was it, 1.75 or something. What was it last year?
Yeah, somewhere around there. I forget the exact number.
But without a doubt, I will be surprised if they don't re-sign Zach Banner. That's where I'm at on Zach Banner.
Yeah, I think he comes back a 1-year deal for right around the minimum, and just give yourself some veteran known depth.
I mean, he's the only player so far that we named that we think's coming back,
right?
Or guaranteed to come back, I would say.
Yeah, very likely to come back.
Gerald Hawkins.
It's a take it or leave it. I mean, if you bring back Banner, I mean, you can bring back Hawkins too. I mean, at that point, certainly Hawkins and even Banner for that matter is not guaranteed to make the 53, but I'm not giving Hawkins any sort of guaranteed money. I'm paying him the minimum. If he doesn't want it, then he walks.
Right. And his minimum, I think, would be $920,000. So displacement from $660. It costs you about a couple $100,000 in cap space to bring Hawkins back. Not a guarantee to happen, but could happen depending on how much more the cap comes in over $175 million, and obviously no guarantee that he makes the roster. Jordan,
would you rather bring back Banner or Hawkins? If you had to choose?
Banner without a doubt.
I'm with you.
Banner. With you. If I get Hawkins back at the minimum, fine. If I don't, fine. And
I probably bring Hawkins back if I lose Filer. If I keep Filer, then I'm not going to bring back Hawkins.
Jordan Berry.
Yeah, I think they're bringing him back 1 year just to have a punter coming in. He had a good year, and when he circled back to Pittsburgh, I thought he punted. I think his average was the best of his career. The net was okay. It wasn't as good as it could be, but I think he comes back for hopefully a really cheap deal. Yeah,
hopefully you can get him on a minimum salary benefit contract or something where you pay him the minimum, you get a reduced cap charge, and obviously hopefully you don't even have to give him the $137,000 signing bonus to get him back, but if you did, so be it. That's all the dead money you'd be on the hook for if he doesn't make it there. It's obviously possible that at least he gets re-signed to a 1-year deal to compete in training camp, and then that's where it ends. I think it's plausible that they at least get him that far.
Yeah, I agree.
Joshua Dobbs.
I mean, he got 3 quarterbacks now. You take 4 into the summer. If Dobbs wants to sign for the minimum, cool. Rooney seemed to intimate that they weren't going to sign him, at least with the idea of we're going to be adding at least one more quarterback to the room. So I don't know how much you want to parse that language, but you need to take it or leave it with Josh Dobbs.
Exactly. It could go either way, but it ain't going either way for more than the minimum.
Mm-hmm.
Period.
Yep.
Last one on the list, Danny Isadora. Who?
Yeah. What do you wear, 64 this year? I think I saw on the sidelines. I saw like, who is that 64 jersey? And I was like, oh, it's Danny Isadora. He's not coming back.
If he does, it's for the minimum with no guarantees, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter if Danny Isadora doesn't come back. That's my bad rock imitation there. Ooh, that's it. That's a list of offensive, unrestricted free agents that the Steelers are faced with. So I think we're looking at plausibility-wise, the highest plausibility-wise, and all depending on the cap number there. I mean, really a lot of them you can make arguments for. Man, JuJu going to be tough. Matt Filer going to be tough. I think Zach Banner, of all the ones on the list, I think Zach Banner is a slam dunk that's going to be back. Other than that, I think we look into maybes on JuJu and Matt Filer.
Yeah, and
the rest don't matter.
Dependent on where the cap comes in at. So that's why you're rooting for the cap to be at least 180. The higher the better. If it came in at 190 though, let's be optimistic here for a second. Then I think you can bring back Matt Filer and JuJu without too much pain.
Right, absolutely. Especially because their first year cap numbers would be, palatable.
Yeah. All right, Dave. So we'll tackle the unrestricted guys on defense for Wednesday's show. Let's talk about some draft talk, since the Steelers certainly will be using their draft picks to replace some of these free agents that they're about to lose. The Senior Bowl took place this Saturday. Pretty good competitive game after it looked like it was going to be a kind of a runaway early on. Any impressions from the game itself or just the week at large?
I think got to learn a little about a lot of players throughout the week. That was my biggest takeaway. I have up in an open window right now the Senior Bowl game that I've gone back through. I've made it a quarterback through that already there. One of the big winners that I have coming away from that is Osi Odighizuwa, who I think we talked a little bit about recently out of UCLA. I thought he played really, really well in that game. I thought your boy Ben Mason really stuck out on tape. More than a few times in that fullback. The question is do the Steelers need a fullback? Will they need a fullback there? He was used, obviously, kind of in a tight end role as well, too. Some split zone stuff that I thought he performed well in on that. I thought he stuck out for sure in there. I thought the Washington cornerback...
Keith Taylor.
Keith Taylor stuck out in a positive way there. Obviously, guys we've already talked about prior to the game, Quinn Miners, interesting cat there for sure. I thought both of the interior Notre Dame offensive linemen, Hainsey and Banks, played well in that game. Defensively, I like the Auburn linebacker, KJ, what's his name? Britt. Yeah, I liked him as a mid-round prospect potentially for the Steelers there. Help me out here. Who else? Obviously, a lot of the guys that we talked about offensive linemen Senior Bowl game, I thought really represented himself well overall. Who else?
Yeah, I think just to circle back on Keith Taylor, everyone wants the 6 foot, 33-inch arm long physical cornerback, and there's a lot of value in that, of course. But that guy better be able to run. If you get a big cornerback, he has to be able to move. Otherwise, he's just a zone cover 2 corner. He's not going to provide much value to your team. And Keith Taylor can run. I mean, he can carry routes vertical, and that's really important. If you're a combination of a big corner who can move, I can work with that. If you have both of those things, so that's a guy I think it's interesting. Had a couple of Washington corners this year. Elijah Bolton, probably a slot guy that probably goes a little bit earlier than Keith Taylor, where he gets selected at. Murray Rogers was interesting. Same with the receiver Des Fitzpatrick out of Louisville. Trying to think
that Des Fitzpatrick, boy, he makes the hard catches look easy and the easy catches look hard.
Kind of a Deion Kane vibe I was getting with Des Fitzpatrick. And then there's a linebacker they kept talking about on the broadcast. I think Grant Stewart from Houston, long hair for 0, trying to block punts. That's a good special teams guy that I think is going to stick in the league for a long time. Maybe just as a special teams type player.
If Ross Ventrone played inside linebacker, that is that kid right there. That is a kid that obviously I don't think he's going to test off the chart measurable wise. But boy, if you get in the 6th or 7th round, you could do worse for a guy that could come in and make your roster as player 53 on special teams.
Yeah, just like Dirty Red, Tyler Medikevich. Stewart's undersized, he's like 5'11 and a half, 230, but he'll stick on your roster for a long time. Also, other guys to look at: Michael Carter, running back from North Carolina, some tough runs. I got a couple of running backs this year: Javonte Williams and Carter. We'll see which guy goes first.
Oof.
Yeah, but he's built well. He's 5'9", but he's like 200 pounds. I mean, he's rocked up and he's got some strength. So that's the guy that is part of this talented running back class that exists.
But you kind of have one of those in Anthony McFarland already, right?
Yeah, to an extent. I think Carter plays with more power though than McFarland.
He's like 5'7". Who's taller, him or you?
Still him, which is very sad.
How tall are you?
Oh, I'm like 5'6" on a good day with a couple pairs.
Are you really?
On. Yeah, I'm real short. I'm one of the short things.
Give us the Dan Patrick measurement so I can ring the bell. Ding. What's height weight?
My height weight?
Yeah.
I don't weigh myself very often. I'm probably 5'6", 120 to 125.
Wow.
I'm very, very tiny.
SM all. Let's see here. Michael Carter, 5'7". I forget what his weight came in at there. Who else there? The Pitt cornerback.
The safety that picked off that pass?
Yeah, the safety.
What's his name?
DeMar Hamlin.
DeMar Hamlin. Yeah, okay. There you go. Yeah, he had a nice interception. Yeah, he's been lauded for his football instincts, his IQ overall.
So in other words, I've still got a lot of homework to do. Tylan Wallace, the wide receiver out of Oklahoma State. I remember watching a lot of film for him, on him from a couple years ago there. Let's see here. I'm trying to think who else. Anybody else that we should have a conversation with? We obviously have the rest of the off season to talk about. So everybody asking about the Iowa State end.
Iowa State end.
What was his name? Or was it Idaho?
Northern Iowa? Was it Northern Iowa?
Maybe it was Northern Iowa. Who was the long six? Who was the guy on the end that made a couple? Northern Iowa, was it? Northern Iowa. Ellerson Smith, was that it? Yeah, Ellerson Smith. That's the kid everybody's asking about. I looked real briefly at some stuff on him, and he just comes off as a true 4-3 end to me. So I don't think he's in this. I don't think what he had a good game. Obviously, I just don't think he's what the Steelers look for.
Did Northern Iowa play football this year?
I don't know.
I feel like no. I feel like those.
I just look at some of his highlights. Is all I looked at on him.
Because that's just going to be obviously playing in the Senior Bowl was huge, just to have that experience and to have some tape. But we know Kevin Colbert's statement seemed to imply a couple months ago that those guys who didn't play this year or played limited action are going to be at a disadvantage compared to the guys that have recent tape to look at.
But here's the thing: Quinn Miners is in that group too. But
right.
And look, I mean, regardless of how well he did at the Senior Bowl, his stock is his stock. Period. I think, and I think he snuck up on us watching him and everybody watching him. I don't think he snuck up on scouts.
Yeah, obviously we react to it more than the scouts who've been following these guys. But still, he didn't play at all this year. So I think a D3 guy like that can get lost in the cracks of it. And I think this was an important week for him to get back on the map and get that buzz and scouts to see him in person. So I think that did boost his stock. But again, for Pittsburgh purposes, I think Miners would be a good fit. I think he's what he plays the way the Steelers are looking for, a tough physical guy that can help you in short yardage. But D3 guy who played no games this year or one game, whatever it was, I think it's going to put him down on the Steelers board compared to a Power 5 guy that they have a lot of tape on.
Right. Where do you feel? What's your initial and obviously it's so hard to pinpoint rounds with these guys because 32 picks difference and he's out of a different round,
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing people don't understand. What is your initial feel as far as round goes when you talk about Miners? Fourth?
Yeah, I was thinking early day 3. What did Ali Marper, I think, was a second round pick, but obviously those were different circumstances where he had a full season. But yeah, I would say late day 2, early day 3 is my guesstimate right now for Quinn Miners.
I mean, definitely upside. That guy was handling people, man, on the tape there. All right, anybody else we need to You know what? I liked what I saw out of that Kellen Mond, the quarterback out of Texas A&M. I thought he, as far as passing ability, I thought he represented himself fairly well.
Yeah, I think he would help lead his team back and almost win that game, if I'm remembering things correctly. I was bummed that Mac Jones couldn't play because of the ankle injury. I wanted to get a good look at Mac Jones. I think that is, again, talking about conversations of Pittsburgh taking a quarterback. If it does happen, Mac Jones is probably the guy you will hear about the most. So bummed that he couldn't play due to that ankle injury.
And for all the hype that Jamie Newman had, I wasn't all that impressed with Jamie Newman.
Yeah, I wasn't either. I mean, none of the quarterbacks in general really. I mean, Mon probably played the best, but I wasn't thrilled. It's a tough circumstance, tough situation for those guys to be in. The one last thing I'll give you is John Battle, the tight end from Boise State. Good size, good blocker, decent hands. Maybe a late day 3 kind of guy to look at.
True or false? Somebody that played in the Senior Bowl or was on a Senior Bowl roster this past weekend will be the Steelers' first-round pick this year.
First-round pick. That's a good question. I don't know. Generally, they go underclassmen, but this year's so weird that it's upperclassmen almost feels more likely to happen. If you want me to make a decision, I'll say true, but I'm not confident in that.
Yeah, I'll say true too, only because of all that's happened with the underclassmen, and I mean, it would have to be a special underclassman for sure.
If we're answering true, who do we think that guy is? Considering the roster, I mean, there's only so many names that you can. I mean, is it Leatherwood? Is it?
I think it would be an offensive lineman.
Okay, so
I like the probability of the offensive lineman, I should say.
So if it's not Leatherwood, who do you think it would be?
I mean, geez, I don't know, Alex. I mean, I'm still, trying to learn so much about some of these players, and I don't think Creed Humphrey's a first round guy. I like Creed Humphrey. I don't think he's a first round guy.
That's probably the other name you could turn to, though, in terms of just guys in that conversation. Humphrey, Leatherwood.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, well, we got a lot of time to figure all that stuff out.
Anyway, I'm going back through, I don't know how many times you watched it, but I'm on my second watch of the Senior Bowl, so hopefully learn a little bit more about these guys as the week goes on.
Last thing I wanted to discuss, Dave, article I wrote over the weekend was with TJ Watt, and this is just something that's caught my eye over the last couple of years. I wanted to put the numbers to it that, when TJ Watt came into the league, he was a traditional stand-up 3-4 outside linebacker. But over the last 2 seasons especially, Dave, TJ Watt is putting his hand on the ground as a 3-point stance pass rusher a whole lot more. In 2019, he rushed with his hand down 54% of the time. Last year, he rushed with his hand down 62% of the time. Compare that to his first year where he did it on 1 snap. Compare that to his sophomore season, 2018, where he rushed with his hand down about 8% of the time. So it went 0%, 8%, 54%, 62%. I don't think it's a complete coincidence that he's having 2 MVP caliber seasons while rushing majority of the time with his hand down, especially on third down where that number spikes to over 75% of the time. So I think that's just creating more explosion for him, maybe some other small benefit, but I think one reason for his success is he's getting to rush with his hand down and be more explosive firing off the ball.
Is that kind of, I was going to ask, what kind of conclusion or what all do you draw from that period?
Yeah, I would love that. If I could ask TJ Watt any question, that's the question I would ask TJ Watt is what are the benefits from rushing with your hand down and why have you decided to do it a lot more often? Because it's not like this is a Steelers thing. Bud Dupree almost never rushes with his hand down, for example, and Alex Highsmith only did it 33% of the time this season. So I would love to know the answer to that, but I'm guessing it's just either better vision on the football or more explosion or a combination of things that makes him more comfortable and more effective.
What a simple question, and what a great one at that. Yeah. That will never get asked unless
I might honestly try to message somebody and be like, please ask TJ this question because I would love to know the answer. I just think it's a great football question to ask. Just to get into his head. That is a
great, especially coming out of the research of the article that you did on it.
Right? Yeah, we can marry that because it's not a coincidence. I mean, I wonder, and this is just me thinking out loud, because the first guy who did this was Anthony Chickolo, who started playing with his hand down a decent amount. I thought that was kind of interesting, and I wonder if, and Chick, it made sense because he was a former defensive end at Miami, was a big dude, and so I wonder if something that Chick did, TJ Watt saw and went, okay, I kind of like that. I want to try it myself, and it worked for him. I don't know, but he's definitely doing it a lot, and I think it's working.
Great research, great article there, and
thank you.
And Hopefully somebody will ask that. Hopefully one of these beat writers, we know a lot of them listen to us.
Yeah. Well, I don't know when they're going to talk to TJ again. It's probably not going to be for several months. So, anyway.
Especially after him blowing off of his exit interview. All right, here's something for you real quick. Paul Alexander, a guy, former offensive line coach in the NFL, a guy that I've got a lot of respect for. I think you do too, from the X's and O aspect. He just released his My 2021 All Senior Bowl offensive line. All right.
Okay.
Dylan Radins out of North Dakota State, a tackle. The other tackle, Alex Leatherwood out of Alabama. He's got two guards here. Aaron Banks out of Notre Dame. The guy, I believe I just talked about him. Mm-hmm. Trey Smith out of Tennessee, someone that we've long had profiled on the site. An impressive guy that you and I have already talked about, I think, 2 or 3 times on this podcast here. And then Creed Humphrey out of Oklahoma is his center. So his center is Creed Humphrey. His two guards are Aaron Banks and Trey Smith. And his two tackles are Dylan Radins out of North Dakota State. I have not watched any. And obviously Alex Leatherwood out of Alabama. So how's that?
Yeah, that's a good group. Yeah, Radun's played some guard too. He's athletic. I like his base. He's got good feet. Experience. I think he was a 3-year starter for the Bison. So he's had a good week. I didn't think Trey Smith had a great week. I thought he struggled in pass pro. I thought he gave up too many moves to the inside, too many rushes to the inside. But who might argue with Paul Alexander and Humphrey, by all accounts, should have a really strong week down in Mobile.
Whenever you get stuff like that, that stuff means the most to me when you got an offensive line coach like that rattling. Mm-hmm. That holds a lot of water there, if you ask me.
I thought for a second you were about to say that Paul Alexander was interviewing for the Steelers O-line job, though. I got real excited for a second there, but that's still good information.
Okay, anything else to wrap up here, Alex?
Nope, I think that's everything, so we can get to some reader emails and close out today's show.
All right, let's go to Jelani Suleiman. Hey, David, I love the show. As always, my question regards in safety position, specifically Terrell Evans. I was one of them who was down on him heading into the season, but he did show signs of improvement. Do you guys think he is the long-term solution at the position to play alongside Minka? Thanks as always for answering my question and your hard work. From where I sit right now, I mean, look, we'll learn what the Steelers think about Terrell Edmonds here in the next couple of months, because the fifth-year option coming up on it. I don't think it'd be stunning if they picked up the fifth-year option on Terrell Edmonds, but within that, I don't think he's a long-term answer for them past his fifth-year option year, which is 2022.
When do they have to decide on the fifth-year option? This June?
Yeah, by May, whatever, right?
Okay.
Is the decision date on there? But just and once you pick it up, it becomes fully guaranteed as well too. So
yeah,
it's obviously not a slam dunk. I would think they'd be leaning more to not picking it up than they would be to picking it up. Be honest with you.
I think they pick it up.
All right, well, if they do, then it's still not guaranteed that you sign him to an extension next offseason,
Yeah, I think you still play things out. I don't think Edmonds is a bad player. I think he's physical. I think he tackles well. His tackling's improved by leaps and bounds over the last couple of years. He fills the alley really well in the run game. He is kind of that prototypical strong safety. The problem is the ceiling is not immensely high. The coverage skills aren't great. He's not going to make a lot of splash plays, but if you have Minkah Fitzpatrick here long term and he is your playmaker at that safety position, and Edmonds is just kind of the all reliable in terms of run game, tackling, things like that, then I think it works well. So I don't think you're making any decisions on that right now. I think you pick up the fifth-year option, play the season out, and kind of go from there. But I'm probably a little less dismissive of the idea.
At best, I think he gets the fifth-year option picked up, and then that's it. I think 2022 is it for him. I don't see much of a future for him past then.
Okay, that's fair.
Let's see here. Bryce writes in, Alex, congrats on the new house. A question for you is money and running back aside, let's say the Steelers could end up with the following starters on the 2021 offensive line from left to right: Chooks, Dotson, Pouncey, DeCastro, Banner, or from left to right: Chooks, Dotson, Pouncey, DeCastro, Filer for both lines. Ebron is a starting tight end in both scenarios. What do you think would be the top 2 or 3 run game schemes for each of those offensive lines based on personnel? I chose. What do you think the specific schemes? My God, we can go down a rabbit hole for 30 minutes on this, man. You're going to obviously see. Look, you see it. You're going to see inside zone. What you'd like to see, period, is a little bit more outside zone, but. And obviously power as well too. You're trying to split the atom there because you're gonna see all this. Although you're not gonna see, the thing that the scheme that the team has stayed away from the most is outside zone. You got to really have an athletic group to be able to do that, and you got to have the right back that's good about choosing run lanes off of that as well too. So
and a tight end who can block is outside zone.
Right.
Usually for the tight end.
So I mean, the default answer here is power and inside zone, man, and power.
Yeah, basically, I mean, you're not changing that lineup too much. I mean, you're flipping some guys around, but that's about it. And so the run scheme that you saw the last couple of years is probably going to be the same run scheme. So there's only so many run schemes that you can have. I think Matt Canada's philosophy is just have a couple of good, strong base runs and do those well. And so I think it would be inside zone and gap runs would be the predominant 2 schemes that you would see. Outside zone would be tough to accomplish with that group. So that's my answer: inside zone and gap.
Steven Novakovic writes in, Dave, you surprised me last summer by predicting the Steelers would face the Buccaneers in the Super Bowl this year. You're not one to get emotionally swayed by your team, so I took notice. Nice call on the Bucs, by the way. So wait a minute. So I got emotionally swayed by the Steelers by picking them to go to go and win the Super Bowl. Is that how you take that?
I think he's saying that he knows that you don't get emotionally swayed. So the fact that you were picking the Steelers really meant something, because it's not like you pick the Steelers every single year because you're a Steelers fan. So I think that's what he's trying to say as a compliment.
I mean, look, they should have been. I tell you what, they should have been in the AFC Championship game. In the story, period.
Yeah,
right.
This was the year. We'll say that again. We'll say it a million more times. This was the year.
We'll
look back. We'll look back and say, man, if Ben doesn't get another ring, we said, man, 2020 that should have been the year. Yep.
Let's see. He writes, we were heading for greatness through 3 quarters of the season. Then it fell apart. Maybe we weren't really as good as 11-0. However, something happened to this team. Everything seemed to change. The coaching staff didn't change, but the team did. Can you point to two or things that caused a fiasco of late 2020 in the Berg? Look, I'll still say this. I'll go to my grave saying this. You just don't go 11-0 willy-nilly in the NFL, period. So they were doing something right there. So what went wrong after the fact? Look, it didn't help that you lose some key components on defense throughout the season in Bud Dupree and Devin Bush as the season went on. That obviously didn't help. Was that what ended up having the second half of the season going the way that it did? It's probably going to be more offensive side of football, just not being able to run successfully enough for starters and not be able to push the football down the field enough as the season wore on, and then not starting fast enough on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I think all those things are 100% true. If I try to distill it down into the most basic things, I would say the complete lack of a run game, especially situationally, which impacted so many things, and a defense that at times could not take the football away. They were great at it for most of the year, but if you look at their losses this season, in all but one of those games, they did not have one takeaway as a defense. And this is a team very reliant on those splash plays and giving their offense an extra possession. So when you combine those 2 things, that's why the losing streak happened and why they got bounced by the Browns.
Rich Hud writes in, good day, Dave and Alex. I'll try to keep this short. Is buying or trading for another tight end possible with all the free agents and picks that maybe haven't lived up? Examples: JuJu Smith, Foster Moreau, O.J. Howard, David Njoku. Knowing what we know about Bell now, would either have drafted Bell in the first round? I guess Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah, I mean, Bell was worth a second-round pick. He was worth, I think, a first-round pick. JuJu Smith hasn't panned out. I think JuJu Smith's having a good career with Tennessee.
No, he's saying is out of the question of maybe buying or trading for one of those tight ends.
Oh, I see. I mean, it would cost more to get. Depends on who. I mean, Howard is going to cost less, and Njoku's going to cost less than JuJu Smith. I mean,
you already have David Njoku on your roster, and his name is Eric Ebron.
Yeah, I just want to draft one. I will save the rant. I will spare you guys the rant, but I just want to invest in a tight end longer term.
Of all the players that Rich Hud just mentioned, you know which one I'm going after if I can get him still on his rookie contract, which you would if you traded for him right now. Foster Moreau needs out of Vegas, and that's the guy that the Steelers, if any of those that you mentioned, if the Steelers were to trade for one, that's the guy.
Well, let me give you poor man's Foster Moreau and Jesse James, because that's what you're going to get. That's okay. What you want is Foster Moreau. What you're probably going to get is Jesse James.
All right. Let's go to Brian Tellini. Do you guys ever sleep? Not
Dave
much.
does, but upside down.
Yeah. Other than quarterback, which I assume is the hardest, which position do you feel is the toughest to scout in terms of trying to predict success from college to pro? Is tight end up there? I am nothing more than a YouTuber, but I have had more swings and misses at that position than any. Look, Brian, I think it goes down to what you know and what you learn and what you get better at over the years. Obviously, if there was one secret to each one of the positions, you'd probably see more of them drafted throughout first rounds or second rounds. It all comes down to you just try to do your homework as best you can and learn more in comparative over the years and all like that. I enjoy personally doing edge rushers and find myself having more success with wide receivers, tight ends, edge rushers than I do anything else, I feel, as far as my comfortability factor goes. What do I think is the toughest maybe across the league to maybe project? I think obviously quarterback because, it's such an important position and there's no real exact science to it, But I think they all bust out. I think you have a certain amount of hits and corner is extremely hard as well too. I think there as well. I think across the board, I don't think there's one that NFL scouts combined or NFL franchises can say, oh wow, we've got this. We know how to pick this group.
No, in Pittsburgh, good at receivers, bad at the guys who cover receivers. For me, I echo what Dave said. I think receivers in a way are tough for me to judge. Like I can judge them and evaluate them, but I usually just come away liking all these guys because they play in spread systems and they put up big numbers and the game looks easy in college because you're not seeing press and not as much man coverage and things like that. So it's harder to evaluate, the things in a receiver that should be red flags until you see it in the NFL. And so I guess for me, that's where I get paused because you want to like all these receivers because they all look good coming out of college and you have to see what skills they might not have that won't translate to the NFL.
Oh, we were talking about people saying, what picks do we not pat? Anyway, someone said we didn't pat ourselves enough on the back on a couple of more recent players too. One of the emails we got said, boy, you guys were all over Terry McLaurin, which we were. So
yeah, scary Terry.
We were big.
You especially, you more than me. You were a big fan of it.
I tell you what really got me about him, not so much the contextualization that I did on him, is that damn Senior Bowl footage, man. Really, the practice footage from him from Senior Bowl is like, wow, All right, JuJu or Bud? Christopher Parks. Hey, guys, love the show. Haven't missed one in years. I'm completely in the let JuJu walk camp. We need a veteran leader in that room. Claypool is quickly headed down the TikTok run your mouth road. We need maturity in that room. Seeing that Bud and JuJu would cost about the same, why not keep the guy that does what this team is built around? We have depth at wide receiver and can grab a guy and develop him like we always do. What say you, sirs? Am I crazy here? Chris in Minneapolis. I know I don't. I know I'm glad I don't live in Minneapolis. No Fitz.
Because of the snow.
Yeah.
I the cold winters. Yeah. I get what you're saying. I don't know. I'd still rather have JuJu because I have a lot of optimism and problems with Alex Highsmith, and there really is no great slot replacement for JuJu. I mean, you could kick Claypool and slide inside more. But I still think I'd rather have JuJu back.
Knowing that, look, you're probably not going to be able to get Bud locked up long term if you got him back anyway. this offseason. I'd want the guy that I could lock up longer term, and that would be JuJu. Derek Demi writes in, hello, fellas. Couple of questions. Given that the salary cap will come in lower this offseason, are we going to see more middle-class free agents than usual around the NFL sign one-year deals in hopes they can sign a bigger contract next offseason? I think there's a possibility of that, Derek. He says, could this help Pittsburgh at all? You have all mentioned guys like Jesse James, Finney, and even Beacham as possible players that might return to the Steelers. Any chance Chicolo is another possibility to return or depth at outside linebacker? Look, Chicolo, if you want to, Alex Kozora.
This is one of those minimum comments. I knew it was coming.
Alex Kozora or Anthony Chicolo on the minimum. Give me Anthony Chicolo.
That hurts. What did Chicolo even do this year? Looks like he played a little bit for the Saints, or for Denver, actually. I had a sack. Chicolo, I don't have any interest in bringing him back. I mean, if you do, fine. But it's interesting with the middle class guys. Like, I think the idea of them taking one-year deals makes a lot of sense. But I guess if you're a team that doesn't have a lot of cap space, it might be harder to spread that take on that one-year deal. So it'll be interesting. It's going to be a tough spot for some of these guys.
All right, I'll be fair here. Alex Kozora, Dave Bryant, or Anthony Chicolo. I will take Chicolo.
I will take Dave Bryant.
No, you wouldn't.
Put your hand in the ground. TJ Watt
no.
do it.
Finally, I love Amari Rodgers' toughness with the ball in his hands. How would he fit in the Steelers' scheme with Canada as the OC? Could he be possibly a JuJu replacement if JuJu finds another team? Seems like Clemson used him in a lot of end-around screens and the like.
They did, yeah. He used a lot of jet plays. So, I mean, he's not a super freaky playmaker, but yeah, he could really fit JuJu's role well. Tough guy over the middle, not as tall as JuJu, but well built for this line. He's like 5'9.5", 210 pounds is what he came in at Mobile. I think he'd be a great replacement overall if you lost JuJu. That'd be one of those guys I would take round 3, round 4, not have a second thought about it.
How about we end with an email from Maine?
Oh, they're getting hit with a ton of snow, 10 to 15 inches, I think.
Bowhead from Maine.
Stay safe, my man.
Dent Burnett. What a name. Dent Burnett. Hey, guys, could you do a profile on Mississippi State running back Kylan Hill? He's a silky smooth runner who was forced to play in Mike Leach's air raid offense. Hill also excels as a receiver and appears to be a serviceable blocker. Thanks. I'm sure we'll probably get to it, Dent. I know nothing about the kid yet. Alex, do you know anything about Hill out of Mississippi State yet?
Just saw one catch he had, or I think the first day of practice at the Senior Bowl. I think it was a one-handed grab out in the left flat, and that kind of caught my attention, those receivers with those good hands. And, yeah, you played a Mike Leach system. I'm guessing you were probably catching as many passes as you carried. I don't know his stat line this year, but part of that good running back class, probably in that Chris Evans camp, maybe a day 3 guy with some third down value.
Dent, keep your eyes peeled to SteelersDepot.com. How many profiles we got now? About 30, 35, Alex?
We're up almost. I think we're at 40 now.
Wow.
And counting. A couple more in the hoppers. We'll be at 45 next day or two.
All right, look, we are going to be getting after it here, Dent. So hopefully, as time goes on, we'll look at tape on some of these guys, and move forward. So we'll add that name to the list there. All right, Alex, we successfully hit the 2-hour mark here.
Yay.
So with that, I know you got some snow to shovel there, and something to write up on this coaching search, I think, report that's out there right now that we covered earlier in the show there. In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. You can follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do, you want to go donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button up right navigational bar. Conversely, if you'd like an ad-free version of SteelersDepot.com, go to the site, hit the ad-free button for $25 for 1 calendar year. You can have an ad-free version of the site. A lot of people are taking advantage of that as well, too. No YouTube live stream tonight, correct, Alex?
Yeah, we'll come back next Monday, but we'll probably start doing this every 2 weeks, every other week, just because until some more Steelers stuff happens, we don't want to have to answer. We don't want to just have to have the same conversation of the same questions, same answers until we get kind of some new stuff for us to all talk about for an hour. And
maybe Wednesday, you and I will talk about that trade between Matthew Stafford and going to the Rams and Goff to the Lions, and going to be hard. we'll have to figure out a way to get Stafford to the Steelers. I don't know how that's going to work now. No.
By the way, here really quickly, and it's just this time of year, but this is from Justin Mello, has a tweet that says Notre Dame edge Dalen Hayes met with 31 teams, everyone but the Rams, but had a great meeting with the Steelers. He says so. Dalen Hayes edge at Notre Dame, someone to keep an eye on.
How many people do they not do teams not meet with at the Senior Bowl? In all honesty,
right. Probably very few. Hayes is saying he met with every single team but the Rams. So Steelers are just one team on that list, but it's draft season, and these are the conversations we have.
Right. But, I mean, to me, it makes sense, especially in the climate this year. You would think that most of all 32 teams talked to most everybody that was at the Senior Bowl in some way, shape, form, whatever.
Agreed.
All right. Until Wednesday. As always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.